because it creates a dependency and it creates a habit that keeps you bound to that business.
Vicki Mack knows all about that. Even though she's a medical doctor, a pediatrician with a thriving practice, she found herself slaving away in the pursuit of new Quixtar recruits. After all, new recruits mean new sales, and new sales mean more money.
We'd be out just even hanging out at McDonald's, at the play places, talking to parents.
At McDonald's?
Yeah.
Now, you graduated from Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
Went to medical school.
Mm-hmm.
Making a very fine salary as a pediatrician. Yeah. And yet you're in a mall and a McDonald's on a Saturday trying to sell this thing?
Yeah.
None of this surprises Bo Short. Not the commitment of time and money, not the emotion, as we saw at the rally we attended.
There's a man with tears.
There are probably many people with tears. And not all of those tears are because they're committed to it. Many of those tears are because they have worked diligently and are not any closer.
If this is not a legitimate business opportunity, then in reality, in your opinion, what is it?
I would use the word scam.
That's what I was thinking too.
Bo Short says when he and several other high-level distributors began to suspect the same thing, they confronted the company's managing director, Ken McDonald.
And I said, Ken, I believe that people are stealing money and you're letting it happen. And he didn't respond. And I remember looking at him a few minutes later. I said, Ken, kick some of them out. Show people you're serious. And he looked at me and said, what would happen to the business?
Short says the company acknowledged it had been aware of the problem for decades. How could that be? Remember when we said Quixtar sounded a little like Amway, a company which drew the ire of the federal government several years back for making false promises to recruits? Well, it turns out Quixtar isn't just like Amway. It was Amway. Quixtar is just its new incarnation with many of the same players. Eric Scheibler and the Macs began as Amway distributors, and many of those same high-level Quixtar distributors also began with Amway. So did Bo Short, who says he decided to walk away from the business and all the money that came with it. You were a poster boy for this outfit. You were on the company yacht. Are you now turning around and biting the hand that fed you?
I don't care if anyone thinks I'm biting anyone's hand that fed me. I'm telling the truth.
Quixtar declined to be interviewed on camera, but its managing director, Ken McDonald, says in a letter that Short's recollection of events is misleading, and he questioned Short's motivation for speaking out. Short does run a small direct marketing firm himself, and Quixtar considers him a potential competitor. Quixtar also says it prohibits its independent distributors from making exaggerated claims about income. As for the company's income, most of that comes from the sale of products, not from tapes and books and tickets to rallies. In its contracts, the company discloses that some distributors do make money from those sales, but that buying those materials is strictly voluntary. As for Bill Britt and some of the other top-level distributors we saw on stage, they also declined our request for an on-camera interview. But their lawyer told us in a letter that the income claims we heard are not promoted or endorsed by Britt and those other top distributors. He also wrote that buying the books and tapes is voluntary, and that how much they make from those sales is not available. So how much does a Quixtar distributor really make? Well, only about $1,400 per year. What's the source for that figure? It's Quixtar itself. You can find it in the fine print of the company's own registration materials. $1,400. That's $248,600 less than what our recruiter, Greg Fredericks, said we could make. We caught up with him at one of his recruitment meetings.
We're doing a story on Quixtar and Quixtar distributors.
Okay.
And these folks here work with me.
Oh, great.
We wanted to ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
Hey, I just want to make sure I heard you right.
First, we reminded him about the money he said we could make.
You're making more than $250,000, $250,000?
Why are you really making
I'm not disclosing that.
$250,000
I
by
don't-
working nearly 15 to 16 hours a week?
But I'm not going to disclose you my information as far as my personal income.
But what he did let slip when he didn't know the camera was rolling was that one of the elite distributors we saw on stage is making most of his money from the motivation business.
Probably 3/4 of it.
And that's from holding seminars?
Seminars, rallies, functions, motivational tools, tapes, books, speaking engagements, appearances.
But he didn't seem to remember saying that.
I don't know.
From
But that would have a
Facebook.
books. That I don't know. You're mentioning a number here, 3/4 of what his income
That's what you said, not what I said.
Did I say that?
And that's about all he had to say.
Well, because I got to run.
Later, we found out something else about Fredericks. Back in the mid-'90s, he was arrested and charged with possession of crack cocaine and is still wanted by police to face charges in North Carolina. What about others involved in Quixtar? Both the FBI and the criminal division of the IRS are making separate inquiries into at least 2 top distributors not focused on in this report. In the meantime, hundreds of thousands of true believers are drawn into Quixtar every year, dazzled by the promise of the good life. But unless things change, says Bo Short, it's a broken promise that will leave broken hearts.
I think people are being hurt. Because understand, the majority of the people in that audience believe or desperately want to believe this. And they sit there with their hearts in it. What about them?
Some former high-level distributors have filed a lawsuit against Quixtar in federal court, accusing the company of antitrust violations and conspiracy. Quixtar disputes the allegations and says it hopes the matter will be resolved through arbitration. For more on this story, log on to our website. The address is dateline.msnbc.com.